The alarm on the bridge of the HSCT Valiant screamed through the darkness. Captain Hart grabbed the armrest of his command chair, his knuckles turning white as the ship shook violently. The warp engines were dying. Something had gone very wrong. "Status report," Hart commanded, his voice steady even as his heart raced. Years of training kept him calm, but his mind was already spinning through worst-case scenarios. Lieutenant Sarah worked frantically at her console, her fingers flying across the holographic display. Her dark hair fell across her face as she bent over her work. Behind her, alarms continued their angry wail through the corridors of the human warship. "Captain, we are reading massive energy fluctuations from the quantum veil," said, not looking up from her screen. "The warp-drive interaction was not what we predicted. We have jumped far deeper into the restricted zone than planned. Much deeper." The quantum veil, every spacefaring species knew about it. For thousands of years, this natural barrier had protected the Empire from unwanted visitors. It was supposed to be impassable. No ship had ever penetrated it successfully. And now the Valiant had crashed right through it like a stone thrown through glass. Captain Hart stood and walked to the main viewing screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. The space ahead was not empty. It was filled with ships, hundreds of them. Massive alien vessels that made the Valiant look like a toy. They were moving toward his position, their weapon systems powering up in response to the human intrusion. "Red alert," Hart said quietly. "All hands to battle stations. Shut down non-essential systems to boost shield generators." Young Ensign Cole rushed onto the bridge, his uniform still half-buttoned. Was only 19 years old, fresh out of engineering academy, but he was smart and he was brave. He had been sleeping in the crew quarters when the alarms started. "Sir, the engines are damaged," reported, taking his place at the engineering console. "I am getting multiple warnings from the main reactor. If we push the engines hard, they might overload. But if we do nothing, those ships will reach firing range in 6 minutes." Hart nodded slowly. This was what every military commander feared. This was the test that would define a leader. Every decision he made in the next few minutes would determine whether his crew lived or died. Across the galaxy in the gleaming throne room of the Emperor, alarms were also sounding. Emperor sat on his throne, a creature that looked like a cross between a reptile and a humanoid giant. His scales were deep crimson, and his eyes burned with intelligence and cold fury. He had ruled the Empire for over 400 years without facing any real military threat. That was about to change. "Explain this," said, his voice like grinding stone. Around him, his court trembled. The Emperor was not happy. Admiral Vexazes stepped forward, bowing deeply. Vexazes was older than most beings in the throne room, with a body marked by scars from ancient battles. His gray scales and calm demeanor had always been comforting too, but not today. Today, even the great admiral looked shaken. "My Emperor, a vessel has appeared inside the quantum veil barrier. Our sensors show it is not one of our own ships, and it is not one of our known allies. The power signature is unfamiliar," Vexazes reported, his words measured and careful. "We are attempting to identify its origin." "Unfamiliar?" leaned forward on his throne. "How is that possible? The veil has protected us no ship has ever penetrated it. Who commands this vessel?" Before Vexazes could answer, a younger officer stepped forward. Minister was ambitious and impatient. He believed the Empire needed to show strength at all times. Weakness was death in the galaxy. "My Emperor, this is clearly an invasion," announced loudly. "We must destroy this vessel immediately and reinforce the veil. If one ship has come through, others will follow. We must strike fast and show all enemies that the Empire will not tolerate this aggression." Admiral Vexazes held up a hand. "Minister, we know nothing yet. We do not even know which species this ship belongs to. Let us gather information before we—" "Information?" interrupted. "Our sensors are clear. An unknown warship has breached our most sacred defense. That is all the information we need." Emperor raised his hand, and silence fell over the throne room like a heavy curtain. All eyes turned to the ancient ruler. His expression was impossible to read. "Send a message to this vessel," commanded finally. "Tell them they have 10 minutes to explain their presence or face destruction, and get me full specifications on everything we know about that ship. Everything." Light years away on the Valiant, Captain Hart was running out of time. The alien ships were closing in, their weapons systems now fully charged. The showed red warning indicators flashing across the advancing fleet. In the background of the bridge, junior officers were praying quietly. Some were thinking about their families back on Earth. Everyone was wondering if this would be the last day of their lives. Sarah's console suddenly lit up with incoming messages. Her eyes went wide. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission," she said. "It is coming from the largest ship in the fleet. They are demanding that we explain our presence or we will be destroyed. We have 10 minutes. Hart took a deep breath. He had trained for combat scenarios his entire career. He had studied strategy, tactics, military history, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Here, deep inside an alien empire with his ship damaged and his crew outnumbered 1,000 to 1, he had to make a choice. He could fight, he could run, or he could do the one thing that no military commander was supposed to do. He could surrender his position and seek peace. The bridge fell silent as everyone waited for their captain to speak. Hart looked at each member of his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw courage. He saw determination. He saw the best of humanity looking back at him, waiting for him to lead them through this impossible situation. "Sarah, open a communication channel," Hart ordered. "Let me speak to their commander." "Captain, are you sure?" asked, her voice uncertain. "Do it," Hart replied. The screen flickered, and suddenly a massive alien face appeared before him. Emperor himself looked directly at Captain Hart across the distance of stars and unspoken hostility. The moment that would change the course of human history had begun. Hart straightened his uniform, looked directly into the camera, and began to speak. His words were simple but carried the weight of humanity's future. The silence that followed Captain Hart's words was longer than 10 seconds. To everyone on the Valiant's bridge, it felt like 10 years. The alien ships continued to advance, their weapons still locked onto the human vessel. Hart stood motionless, watching the face of Emperor on the screen. The alien ruler said nothing. He simply stared back at Hart with those ancient, unreadable eyes. Then spoke. His voice was deep and carried the weight of absolute authority. "Lower your weapons, human," the Emperor commanded. "This is unusual. I have never encountered a species willing to speak instead of fight. Let us see if you are brave or simply foolish." Admiral Vexazes appeared on the screen beside, and Hart could see the military officer nodding slightly, as if confirming something he had suspected. The alien ships around the Valiant began to slow their approach, maintaining their distance but not attacking. Sarah exhaled deeply, her hands trembling as she released the breath she had been holding. Around the bridge, officers began to relax slightly, though no one removed their eyes from the main screen. "All stop on offensive actions," Hart ordered. "Lower our weapon targeting systems, but keep shields at full strength. Sarah, prepare a detailed data packet about Earth and humanity. Include peaceful intentions and our cultural values. We are going to send them something that shows we are more than just a military threat." Over the next few hours, the situation remained tense but stable. The alien fleet maintained its distance. Hart and Emperor had several more exchanges, each one revealing new information about the other species. Seemed genuinely fascinated by humanity. He asked detailed questions about Earth's location, humanity's history of conflict and cooperation, and why humans would dare venture into deep space with such a small ship. Hart answered everything honestly. He explained that the Valiant was an experimental vessel designed to explore and gather knowledge. He told that humanity had only recently entered the wider galaxy, and that this encounter, however dangerous, represented a historic opportunity for both species to learn about each other. But not everyone on the Imperial side was pleased with this development. Minister contacted Admiral Vexazes directly through a secure channel, demanding that the human ship be destroyed before it could gather any more intelligence about the Empire. "This is weakness," hissed into his communicator. "The Emperor is losing his edge. A ship breaches our most sacred defense, and we simply talk to them. Other species will see this as an invitation to invade." Vexazes listened, but said nothing. The Admiral had spent 4 centuries learning to read people, to understand what they really meant when they spoke. And what he heard in the Emperor's questions about humanity was not weakness. It was wisdom. It was the sound of a leader recognizing something important. Aboard the Valiant, Cole was working frantically in the engine room. The damage from the warp drive explosion was severe. The main reactor was unstable, and he knew that if they tried to jump to warp again before repairs were complete, the entire ship could be destroyed. "We need at least 72 hours to get this right," told Hart over the ship's internal communication system. If we try anything before that, we are looking at catastrophic failure. Hart understood the danger. They were trapped here for 3 days with a fleet of alien ships surrounding them. Any number of things could go wrong, but there was no other choice. Dr. David, the Valiant's chief science officer, made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing the readings from the quantum veil, he noticed something strange. The barrier had patterns. It had a structure. It was not random at all. It was almost like code. Brought his findings to Hart immediately. The captain listened carefully as the scientist explained his theory. "Sir, I think the quantum veil is not just a natural phenomenon," said, his voice filled with excitement and worry. "I think it was engineered. Someone, some ancient civilization perhaps, created this barrier. And if I am right about these patterns, the technology could be the key to understanding advanced warp mechanics. This could revolutionize everything we know about faster-than-light travel." Hart saw immediately what this meant. If the Empire knew that Hart and his crew had discovered something about the veil that had been hidden for, it could be valuable leverage. It could also be extremely dangerous. "Keep this information secure for now," Hart instructed. "We need to understand exactly what we have before we show anyone else." 24 hours passed, then another 24. The Valiant remained in its holding position, surrounded by Imperial ships but not attacked. Hart had several more conversations with Emperor. The Emperor asked about human philosophy, human art, human dreams. It was a strange and unexpected turn of events. Instead of preparing for battle, Hart found himself in a kind of cultural exchange with one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy. Counselor Wei, the Valiant's diplomatic officer, worked with Hart to craft messages that showed humanity in the best possible light. Together, they selected human music, literature, and images of Earth's natural beauty to send to the Emperor. They wanted to understand that humans were not just warriors, but creators and dreamers as well. Then on the 3rd day, everything changed again. A message came through from the Imperial fleet. It was from Minister, and it was a threat. "This diplomatic nonsense ends now," his message said. "We have orders from the Military Council to move forward with the destruction of your vessel. You have 1 hour to transmit your entire crew to our receiving ships. Only then will we spare your lives." Hart looked at Sarah. She looked back at him with fear in her eyes, but also with trust. She believed in her captain. She believed that he would find a way through this. Hart activated the communication system and sent a message directly to Emperor. "Your Majesty, I believe there are those who wish this conversation to end. I am asking for your protection, not as a defeated enemy, but as a potential ally. Give me the chance to prove that humanity is worth knowing." For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the door to the communication channel opened again. It was Emperor himself, and this time he was not alone. Behind him stood Admiral Vexazes and several other high-ranking military officers. Minister was notably absent. "Minister has been removed from his position," announced. "I have made my decision, Captain Hart. You and your crew will remain here as my personal guests. In 6 months, we will hold a council of all the major species in this galactic sector. At that council, we will decide the fate of humanity's presence in our space. Until then, you are under my protection." The Emperor leaned forward slightly, his ancient eyes burning with intensity. "But understand this, human. If you betray my trust, if you show yourself to be something other than what you claim, then all the mercy I show today will turn to fire. Do you understand?" Hart stood tall and met the Emperor's gaze through the screen. "I understand, Your Majesty, and I swear to you that humanity will not disappoint you." As the communication ended, Hart turned to find his entire bridge crew watching him. They had heard every word. They knew what had just happened. Humanity had survived its first encounter with alien civilization. They had passed the test. The Great Assembly Hall was the largest building that Captain Hart had ever seen. It floated in neutral space, maintained by a coalition of 5 different galactic powers who had agreed long ago that no single species should control the meeting place where decisions about the entire galaxy were made. The hall was shaped like a massive circle, with elevated platforms arranged in a spiraling pattern, each one positioned so that every species could see and hear every other species. Hart stood on the human platform, watching as representatives from over 30 different alien civilizations took their places. The diversity was breathtaking. There were reptilians like but also beings that looked like living crystals, creatures that seemed to be made entirely of energy, and species whose appearance Hart could barely comprehend. Each species brought its own culture, its own history, and its own agenda. Captain stood beside Hart, her military uniform crisp and her bearing perfect. Had been Hart's second officer on the Valiant, and in the 3 months since they had emerged through the quantum veil, she had proven herself to be one of the finest strategic minds Hart had ever worked with. She had coordinated with the Imperial fleet, studied alien military tactics, and prepared humanity for this moment. "There are more of them than we expected," whispered to Hart. "I count at least 35 different species represented here. And each one is deciding right now whether we are a threat or an opportunity," Hart replied quietly. The session began with Emperor explaining the circumstances of the Valiant's arrival through the quantum veil. He spoke with respect for humanity, describing Hart's choice to seek peace instead of engaging in combat. But not all the other species leaders seemed pleased with his account. Ambassador rose from the Confederacy platform. They were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless traders and fierce competitors. They saw every new species as either customers or competitors, never as equals. "Your Majesty," began, his voice smooth and calculated, "you speak of this human captain with admiration, but has anyone considered what this species truly represents? A warship entering our space without permission or explanation. They could have spy technology we do not understand. They could be scouting our defenses for a larger invasion force. We should demand that they be studied, their ship dismantled, their technology examined." Other ambassadors nodded at these words. The fear was spreading. Fear was always easier to fuel than trust. Hart stood, his turn had come. "I am Captain Hart of Earth," he said clearly. His voice was transmitted through translation devices that converted his words into the languages of every species in the hall. "Everything Emperor has told you is true. We came through the quantum veil by accident, but I stand before you now to tell you that this accident may be the best thing that ever happened to any of us." Hart paused, letting his words settle. "Humanity is a young species. We are new to space travel. We have made mistakes, and we will make more mistakes in the future. But we are here not to conquer, not to steal, and not to spy. We are here to learn and to build relationships. We come from a world called Earth. It is a harsh planet. Our history is filled with conflict. But through that conflict, we learned something important. We learned that cooperation is stronger than war. We learned that understanding is more valuable than conquest. We are offering that knowledge to this galaxy." Scholar rose from the platform. They were an ancient species, known for their wisdom and their love of knowledge. Himself was thousands of years old, with skin that shimmered like polished stone and eyes that seemed to hold the memories of. "I would like to ask the human captain a question," Scholar said. "Your species has only recently entered the galaxy, yet you bring a warship to our space. This seems contradictory to your claims of peaceful intent. Why are you not carrying trade goods? Why not send scientists and explorers instead of warriors?" It was a good question, and Hart knew he had to answer it honestly. "Scholar, you are correct to question us," Hart said. "We brought a warship because we did not know what we would find. In our early days of space exploration, we learned that the galaxy could be dangerous. We sent out the Valiant because it was our most advanced vessel. It contained our best crew. We wanted to be prepared for any situation. But when we encountered Emperor, we chose to use that advanced technology and advanced training not for fighting, but for communication. That choice was what mattered." Commander Dex, leader of the Void Syndicate, a group of spacefaring pirates and mercenaries, laughed loudly from his platform. "Listen to this," Dex said, his voice harsh and mocking. "A human talks about peace while commanding a warship. I have seen this before. I have dealt with lying species for 300 years. They speak of peace while preparing for war. I propose we seize this vessel immediately and sell its technology to the highest bidder." Moved to speak, but Hart placed a hand on her arm. He needed to handle this himself. "Commander Dex, if you attempted to seize the Valiant, my crew and I would defend it," Hart said calmly. "But more importantly, such an action would prove that this entire galactic community has forgotten how to trust. It would prove that might truly is the only thing that matters in this galaxy. Is that who you want to be? Is that what you want your children to learn from watching how you treat a young species trying to find its place?" The hall fell silent. Hart's words had struck something deep. Counselor Jin Park, one of Hart's political advisors, had been studying the reactions of every species leader. After several hours of debate, Jin approached Hart with important information. "Captain, I have been analyzing the patterns of support and opposition," Jin whispered urgently. "The support us. So do the collective and the Shen collective. That is enough to form a voting majority if we can secure one more powerful ally. I recommend we approach the Dominion directly. They are neutral so far, but they have been listening carefully. I believe they can be persuaded." Hart nodded. The next few hours were crucial. Hart met with the ambassador, a tall crystalline being named. They explained humanity's desire to be part of the galactic community, to contribute knowledge and culture, not just military power. Listened carefully. His form shimmering with colors that Hart had learned indicated deep thinking among the. "We will support humanity's provisional membership," announced finally. "But we will also demand something in return. You must share your knowledge about the quantum veil's structure with this council. If your scientists have learned something new about this ancient barrier, it belongs to all of us, not just the Empire." Hart had known this question would come. He and his crew had already discussed it. They had decided that sharing knowledge was the price of trust. "We agree," Hart said. "We will share everything our scientists have discovered about the veil." The vote took place that evening. When the results were announced, humanity had been granted provisional membership in the galactic community for a period of 6 months. After that time, a new vote would be held to determine if humanity could become a full member. But not everyone accepted the result peacefully. General, a powerful military officer from the Empire, appeared on the communication screens as the assembly was concluding. His face was twisted with anger. "This is an outrage," declared. "We have forgotten the wisdom of strength. We have forgotten that weakness in our midst leads to destruction. Emperor, you have brought shame to your throne. I am taking my forces and leaving the Empire's command. If this human species will not be generals, rebellion had been building in secret for weeks." The military officer had never accepted Emperor's decision to welcome humanity into the galactic community, for the old ways were the only ways. Strength came from showing no mercy. Stability came from crushing any threat before it could grow. And humanity, in his mind, was the greatest threat the Empire had ever faced. In the shadows of several military outposts throughout the Empire gathered his forces. He had supporters among the military ranks, officers who shared his belief that the Emperor had gone soft. He had enough ships to challenge the Imperial fleet, and he had a plan that he believed would change everything. Plan was simple but devastating. Would stage a false attack on the Valiant, making it appear that the human ship had launched the assault. The damage would be carefully controlled, enough to seem real but not enough to destroy the vessel. Then would present evidence of the attack to the Galactic Council, claiming that the humans had betrayed the agreement and attacked Imperial forces. With that evidence, he could turn the other species against humanity. Emperor would have no choice but to order the Valiant destroyed. The humans would be eliminated and would emerge as the savior of the Empire. But Captain Hart was not an easy target. His crew had been trained to watch for deception. And more importantly, Dr. David had been analyzing the Imperial communications networks, looking for technical anomalies and patterns that might indicate hidden activity. It was Sarah who first noticed something wrong. She was monitoring the usual channels for Imperial fleet communications when she detected an unusual burst of encrypted messages between several military outposts. The messages were being sent on frequencies that should not have been active. Someone was hiding something. Brought her findings to Hart immediately. The captain reviewed the data and knew instantly what it meant. Someone in the Empire was plotting against them. Hart called a meeting with his senior officers. Sarah, Doctor, and Counselor Jin Park gathered in the captain's ready room aboard the Valiant. The mood was tense. "We are facing a conspiracy," Hart said directly. "Someone in the Imperial military is planning something against us. We need to find out who and what they are planning before they act." His military mind was already working. "We need to establish secure communication with Admiral Vexazaz and Emperor. If there is a conspiracy within the military, they need to know. But we must be careful. If we accuse the wrong person, we could create chaos that tears the Empire apart." Doctor had been quiet, but now he spoke up. "Captain, I may have something that could help. The encrypted messages are using a specific encoding pattern. It is not standard Imperial military encryption. If I can break the code, we might be able to read the messages and understand the full scope of the plot." "Do it," Hart ordered. "Work on this immediately. The rest of you, we need to prepare for the possibility that violence is coming. I want our weapons systems ready, but keep them off standby mode. If anyone detects we are preparing for combat, the conspiracy might accelerate. Jin, work with me on diplomatic messaging. We need to have responses ready for every scenario." For the next 18 hours, the Valiant's crew worked in tense silence. Doctor broke through the encryption at the same moment that Sarah detected the rebel fleet beginning to move from their hidden positions. They were coming for the Valiant. The encrypted messages revealed everything. His plan was laid out in military language, complete with timing, force deployment, and contingency strategies. Hart read through the messages and both of them understood the danger they were facing. "He is going to try to stage a false attack that appears to come from us," said, her voice controlled but tight with anger. "If this works, it will destroy everything we have accomplished." Hart made his decision. "We go to Emperor with this evidence right now. We tell him everything, and we tell him we are prepared to help him stop this conspiracy. We do not run, we do not hide, we stand and face this." The message was sent to with the evidence attached. For several minutes there was no response. Hart stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the rebel fleet grow closer on his sensors. His crew looked to him, waiting for orders. Then communication came through. It was Admiral Vexazes. "Captain Hart, the Emperor has reviewed your evidence. General's rebellion is confirmed. The Emperor authorizes you to take defensive action against the rebel fleet. However, we have a request. Instead of destroying ships immediately, we are asking if you would work with us to capture him and expose his plot completely. This conspiracy runs deeper than we realized. Several high-ranking officials may be involved." Hart understood, did not just want to crush the rebellion. He wanted to understand how deep it went, to make sure that all the traitors were identified and removed. This was a moment that would define the future of the Empire. "Tell the Emperor we are ready to help," Hart replied. Took command of the tactical response. She positioned the Valiant to intercept's fleet before it could reach the Imperial capital. The human ship's weapons were advanced and precise. Had studied alien military tactics for months, and she understood how to use the Valiant's smaller size and superior engineering to her advantage. The battle that followed was fierce but brief, coordinated with Imperial forces that Emperor had dispatched. The rebel fleet was surrounded. They had no escape route. General, seeing that his rebellion had failed before it had even truly begun, attempted one final act of destruction. He activated a virus in the Imperial military network, trying to erase all evidence of his plot. But Doctor had anticipated this. He had already uploaded protective code to the military computers, protecting the evidence from deletion. Was captured, his fleet was neutralized, the conspiracy was broken. But the victory came with a cost. 7 members of the Valiant's crew had been injured in the battle, and 2 had died. Their names were Ensign James Park and Lieutenant Robert. They had been among the first humans to die in combat against alien forces. Hart stood in the memorial room with his crew and held a service for the fallen. He spoke about their courage, about their sacrifice, about how they had given their lives so that humanity could find its place in the galaxy. As he spoke, Hart understood something fundamental. The price of peace was sometimes paid in blood. Emperor sent a personal message to Hart after the battle. The Emperor's voice was heavy with gratitude and respect. "Captain Hart, you have proven something that I did not expect when first we met. You have shown that humanity is not just brave in words, but brave in action. You have fought alongside us and proven your loyalty not through promises, but through deeds. General and his conspirators have been arrested. They will face trial. And more than that, I am announcing today that I am formally inviting humanity to establish permanent diplomatic relations with the Empire. This is not a provisional arrangement anymore. This is a permanent alliance." Hart received this news with mixed emotions. They had won. Humanity had proven itself in the eyes of the Empire, but the cost had been real. 2 of his crew would never go home. 2 families on Earth would receive messages that would break their hearts. 6 months had passed since the Valiant first emerged through the quantum veil. Captain Hart stood on the observation deck of the human ship and looked out at the stars of the alien sector. So much had changed. So much had been gained. But so much had also been lost. The memorial wall in the Valiant's main corridor held 43 names. 43 men and women who had given their lives so that humanity could find its place among the stars. Hart visited that wall every day. He felt the weight of each name. He understood that every mission, every negotiation, every step forward in humanity's integration into the galactic community had been paid for with blood and sacrifice. But today was different. Today, the final vote would take place. The Great Assembly Hall was even more crowded than it had been 6 months ago. Species had arrived from across the galaxy to witness this historic moment. The question before the council was simple but profound. Would humanity be granted full membership in the galactic community, or would they be rejected and forced to return to Earth as failures? Captain Hart, dressed in his formal uniform with medals earned through courage and sacrifice, stood before the assembly. Beside him stood Ambassador, a brilliant human diplomat who had been selected to represent Earth's interests in the broader galactic community. Behind them stood, now promoted to Admiral of the Joint Human Imperial Task Force, a position that would have been impossible to imagine just months ago. Emperor rose to address the council. The ancient ruler's voice carried the authority of 400 years of rule. When the human vessel first entered our space, I faced a choice that I believe many of you would have made differently, began. I could have ordered its destruction. I could have treated this as an invasion. Instead, I chose to see potential. I chose to see an opportunity. Today, I can tell you that I was right to make that choice. The Emperor described everything that had happened. He spoke of humanity's restraint in the face of overwhelming military force. He spoke of their commitment to diplomacy and understanding. He spoke of their courage when they discovered a conspiracy within the Empire and chose to help defeat it rather than exploit the chaos for their own gain. Humanity has proven that they are not just warriors, said. They are also builders, dreamers, and partners in the great work of maintaining peace and stability across our galaxy. Then came the opposition. Some species still opposed human membership. Commander Dex from the Void Syndicate stood and repeated his old arguments about danger and security. Several other ambassadors voiced concerns about humanity's level of technological development, about whether they were truly ready for this responsibility. But Hart had prepared for this. When the time came for human response, he stood and spoke from his heart. "I'm not going to tell you that humanity is perfect," Hart said clearly. "We are not. We are a young species with a young culture. We have made mistakes, and we will make more mistakes in the future. We are still learning how to live in a galaxy that is so vast and so filled with wonder and danger. But I can tell you this. Humanity understands something that I think many older species may have forgotten. We understand that strength is not just about weapons or power. Strength comes from choosing to do the right thing even when the wrong thing is easier. It comes from showing mercy when you have the power to show cruelty. It comes from choosing to build rather than destroy." Hart paused, looking directly at each group of ambassadors. "We did not come to this galaxy to conquer. We came because we believe that this universe is too vast and too beautiful for any species to face it alone. We want to be partners. We want to be friends. We want to stand beside you and help protect the peace that you have worked so hard to build. That is what humanity offers to this galaxy." The vote took place. When the results were announced, humanity had been granted full membership in the galactic community by a vote of 31 species in favor, 4 opposed, and 3 abstaining. Humanity was no longer an outsider. They were part of the galaxy now. The celebration that followed was unlike anything the Valiant's crew had experienced. Different species, representatives from across the galaxy, came forward to welcome humanity officially into their midst. Trade agreements began to be discussed. Scientific partnerships were proposed. Military alliances were formed. Was approached by military leaders from 7 different species. They wanted to discuss joint training programs and coordinated defense strategies. Admiral Vexazaz embraced like a sister, recognizing in the human officer a kindred spirit who understood the true meaning of honor. Doctor found himself the center of attention among the scientific community. And several other species researchers wanted to collaborate on the mystery of the quantum veil. Realized that his research would now have access to resources and knowledge that would have taken humanity centuries to develop alone. But amidst all the celebration, Hart took time to think about what had really happened. The diplomatic triumph was real, but it was only part of the story. Humanity's position in the galaxy was still fragile. There were still those who opposed them. General was sitting in an imperial prison, and his supporters were still active in various corners of the galactic community. Ambassador approached Hart later in the evening. The diplomat was an older woman with graying hair and the bearing of someone who had spent a lifetime in politics. "Captain, I have accepted a position as humanity's permanent representative to the Galactic Council," announced. "I will be staying here, but I think you have other duties calling to you." Hart nodded. He had already received orders from Earth. The Valiant was being recommissioned. It would become the first official vessel of human space exploration and diplomacy. Hart had been promoted to admiral, and he would have command of not just the Valiant, but of several new ships that were being built specifically for human explorers. "I am being sent home," Hart said quietly. "To Earth. There is much to tell. The entire world is waiting to hear about what we have found out here." Smiled, "And you will tell them, Admiral. You will tell them that the universe is not a frightening place filled with enemies. It is a universe of possibilities. You will tell them that humanity has found its place among the stars, and that place is one of honor and respect." That night, Hart stood once more on the observation deck of the Valiant. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the crew members who had died. He thought about the challenges still ahead. The future of humanity among the stars was not guaranteed. There would be conflicts. There would be misunderstandings. There would be species that tried to take advantage of human trust and cooperation. But there would also be wonders beyond imagination. There would be the chance to explore worlds that humans had only dreamed about. There would be the opportunity to build something lasting and meaningful. Hart received a final message from Emperor. The ancient ruler's words were brief but powerful. "Thank you for proving that can be something more than destroyers. Thank you for showing us that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from weapons, but from the courage to choose peace. You came to my empire as a threat. You leave as a friend. Go now and tell your people that they are welcome in this galaxy. Go and build the future that you have promised." As the Valiant prepared for the long journey home to Earth, Admiral Hart stood on the bridge of his ship. His crew around him was busy preparing for departure. Sarah was monitoring the navigation systems. Cole was running final checks on the engines that had been completely repaired. The ship hummed with life and purpose. Hart activated the ship-wide communication system and addressed every member of the crew. "In 6 months, we came to a point in space that should have been the end of our story," Hart said. "We were surrounded by enemies. We were out of our depth. Everything was against us. But this crew, your crew, made a choice. We chose to be better than circumstances demanded. We chose to seek peace instead of war. We chose to show that humanity deserves a place of honor in this galaxy. Today, that choice has been vindicated. Humanity is no longer alone. We are part of something greater now. And our journey is only just beginning." The Valiant began its journey home. Behind them, the alien sector faded into the distance. Ahead of them lay Earth and the future of humanity. As the ship entered warp, Hart looked at the stars and felt a sense of profound peace. They had not just survived their encounter with the alien galaxy. They had transformed it. They had shown the universe what humanity could be when courage and compassion worked together. The human warship that had appeared in the Empire's sector and ignited galaxy-wide panic had instead become the ship that started a new era. An era of cooperation between species. An era of growth and discovery. An era in which humanity finally took its rightful place among the stars. And the best part was, it was only the beginning. That night, alone in his quarters, Hart thought about what it meant to be the representative of an entire species among the stars. He thought about the responsibility that came with every decision, and he thought about how far humanity still had to go. The rebellion had been defeated, but Hart knew that this victory would inspire new enemies. Those who believed in the old ways, who feared change, who wanted to preserve the power structures of the past, would not accept this defeat quietly. They would regroup. They would plan. They would attack again. The real work was only just beginning. "Destroyed by our government, then I will destroy them myself." Before anyone could respond, his connection was cut off. The transmission ended abruptly. Emperor stood, his ancient face grim and determined. "General has chosen rebellion," the Emperor announced. "But he will not succeed. Captain Hart, I fear that your true test has only just begun. There are those in my empire, and perhaps in other powers as well, who cannot accept the changes we have begun. They will fight to stop us." Hart understood what the Emperor was saying. Politically, humanity had won. Diplomatically, they had proven themselves. But in the real test of strength, the real danger was still ahead. The people who rejected change were gathering, and they would not be easy to defeat. But Hart also knew that this was only the beginning. Far bigger challenges lay ahead. The real test was just starting. "I am Captain Hart of the human warship Valiant. We came through the quantum veil by accident, not by design. We are not here to invade your empire. We are here because we believe that intelligent species can find a way to talk before they find a way to fight. I am asking you to give us that chance." In the throne room, Emperor leaned back on his throne. For the first time in 400 years, something surprised him. The Emperor's ancient eyes flickered with curiosity and something else, something that looked almost like respect.